Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are on book 3, chapter 8, the law of progress. Last week we stopped on question 785. We're going to start today, question 786. The item is Degenerate Peoples. And Philip, can you read for us?
History shows us many peoples that have lapsed into barbarism after being subjected to shocks or blows that have devastated them. Where is progress in these cases? When your house threatens to fall down, you tear it down to build another that is more stable and more practical. However, chaos continues in your home until the latter is built. Here is another example. You are poor and live in a hut, but you become wealthy and leave the hut to live in a palace. A poor person then comes along, moves into the hut you have vacated. This individual is a winner in the move, as he or she was previously homeless. Well, then, learn from this that the spirits incarnated in this declining culture are no longer those who have comprised that culture during its time of splendor. The more advanced spirits have moved on to better worlds and have progressed, while the less advanced have taken their vacated places, which they too will in turn vacate.
Yeah, this is very important for us when we are studying the law of progress and we talk about reincarnation, right? Because we see, first, the question asked about these people that relapsed into barbarism after being subject to blows, shocks, or blows. It's interesting, this was written in 1857, and we just have to go back a little bit to what happened in New Orleans with Katrina, right? The days after Katrina devastated the city, there was a lot of barbarism happening in the city, with people taking advantage of the destruction and the lawless situation. Uh, Again, we are imperfect spirits. We need, at this level of our evolution, we need control, and we need human laws to be imposed on us as society so we can live in harmony with each other. Whenever these laws are weakened, we run the risk in allowing our inferior instincts to prevail. So we are always progressing, but sometimes we fall prey to our inferior tendencies that still prevail on us, and we relapse into acts that are not in conformity with our previous behavior. It's not that we have regressed, is that we didn't progress in the first place. We see sometimes people talking about some things that happen out there, and they talk about the people that have commit horrible acts, and they say, "Oh, I could never imagine that that person could be was capable of committing these actions." And again, it's the way that society imposes our behavior that we felt obliged to follow the rules of the places we live and the laws of society out of fear or out of respect, but it's not something that is in that we have inside of us. It's not part of who we are still. It's something that rationally we know that we have to follow, but deep down, it's not part of who we are. So this is what happens in this case, the first part. The second part, the spirits talk about evolution, right? we evolve, we move to a better place. The place we left behind is worse, but some other spirits or individuals come and live in that place. It's a progress for us that moved to a better place. It's a progress for them that lived in a worse place. So we go back to that hut and we see someone living there that is behaving worse than the previous individual that lived there. It's not a lack of progress. It's not a relapse into barbarism. It's just that the spirit, that individual that is living now is it's less evolved. We see this sometimes when cities become more dangerous, abandoned, and we see some places everywhere in the world, cities that used to thrive, and then something happens, either a calamity or an industry or a business that was responsible for giving a lot of jobs to the city moves away, and then the city enters into decline and falls into worse conditions. Again, it's not that there is no progress for the individuals. The city itself and the people living there are allowing their inferior instincts to prevail. So it's very important for us to understand these concepts and think of the reincarnation process of more evolved spirits moving forward and less advanced spirits taking their places. So when the spirits tells us here, the more advanced spirits have moved on to better worlds and progressed, while less advanced have taken their vacated places, which they too will in turn vacate. So if we think an interesting example, right? Egypt, 5,000 years ago, was the most advanced civilization on Earth. The spirits that live there were the most advanced spirits on planet Earth. Nowadays, Egypt is a country that belongs to the third world, right? It's not one of the most developed countries, but the spirits that are there today, of course, are not the same spirits that were there 5,000 years ago. They already moved on. Actually, the spirits from Capella returned to Capella eventually. So other spirits are taking their places. But in many ways, of course, the Egypt of today is much more advanced than the Egypt of 5,000 years ago. It's just that compared to the rest of the world, it may be less advanced in some areas, right? So, countries also go, and we're going to see this, go through transformations, evolve more or less, but we are all progressing. The law is of progress, and that's very important for us to understand. We talked about this last week. Progress is slow, and the changes happen very slowly, and sometimes it looks like things are worse than they were before. But I gave the example last week. Just watch the movie Gangs of New York. You're going to see how New York was 200 years ago and how you compare to today. Are you going to say that it was better 200 years ago? You cannot say that, right? So there is always progress, but progress doesn't mean perfection, doesn't mean that all the problems are solved. We find new problems and we carry other problems also, right? If you think of a plane, planes have make us progress in terms of flying and shortening distances, allowing transportation of goods, transportation of people, but there are plane accidents, right? So people that can say, oh, it was better when we didn't have planes because nobody died in a plane accident. This is, that's not how it works. The law is of progress. We need to progress, and with progress comes the challenges of it that sometimes cause harm, cause destruction, but we rebuild and move on again. For us to renovate our house, we are going to have to destroy part of it. We are going to have to go through dust and and issues and difficulties, but in the end, we'll have a better house to live. So that's the law of progress. Okay. All right. Next.
787. Are there individuals who are intrinsically rebellious towards progress? Yes, but they progressively annihilate each other physically. What will be the fate of the souls that incarnate in these races? They will reach perfection by experiencing other lives. God does not disinherit anyone. So the most civilized human beings may have been savages and cannibals. You were once one. You were one once, even more than once, before becoming what you are now.
Okay. Sorry that I missed the savages there. I didn't change. I'm changing all the savages because I was actually looking for this today. Um, the word in French and in Portuguese, it's not derogatory, right? It's just early Earth people, right? Or indigenous people. Indigenous in the sense that they're the people that who have their origins in that place. Um, Savages in English is derogatory nowadays, right? So we're trying to not use it. And there is, if we go down a little bit, there will be another that I replaced, but I missed that one. So again, when we talk about the individuals that are rebellious toward progress, yes, we do have. And yes, we discussed last week, right? We have nowadays in several places in the world people trying to prevent progress from happening, trying to revert to old habits, to old customs. But, you know, the spirits are very clear here. They progressively annihilate each other physically, incarnated ones. They're talking about incarnated spirits, right? Because they cannot agree on the things that they want for themselves and for others, and they end up conflicting with each other. If you look at if you analyze the different levels of spirits, more evolved spirits, they try to help others. They try to be charitable towards others, and they don't enter into conflicts and fights. They help each other in a productive way, right? That's the characteristic of a more evolved spirits. Spirits that are less evolved and are focused on themselves, where selfish and pride prevails, or they are inclined to cause harm and do evil, they end up believing others are like them, and they end up fighting each other. And like Elmo said already, right? The law of progress means that we will all return to the spiritual world. So these spirits that are trying to prevent progress, what happens? Like this, the question part A answers, right? They will reach perfection by experiencing other lives. They'll face the consequence of their actions. They'll return to the spiritual world. If they insist on their actions, they will come into much more difficult incarnations, but they will have, like we all have, endless opportunities to progress. It's just the way that these opportunities come to us will be different from each one of us. For those that are following the right path, future incarnations will become easier than the previous ones. For those that insist on causing harm to others, on causing difficulties to others, they will find themselves facing more difficult incarnations. And because the law is of progress, of course, the last question, most civilized humans may have been cannibals, may have been, primitives in terms of living in the jungle or other things. Yes, we were all in our evolutionary path primitive people. We start as very simple and unaware spirit or ignorant in the sense of lack of knowledge, and we evolve. So we may have committed many crimes, not only being cannibals, but may have committed horrific crimes against other human beings for lack of knowledge, for lack of understanding. But we are here today on our evolutionary path, still in perfect spirits, still needing to fight against our imperfections. But the fact that we have reached a certain level of moral evolution means that we are progressing. And I gave another example last week, right? In the Roman times, we used to enjoy going to the circus to see other human beings being eaten by lions and tigers and destroyed. We enjoy watching that. Nowadays, we can think of very few people that will enjoy these things. The absolute majority of people will be horrified if they watch this spectacle that no longer is part of any civilization here. But we still have other barbaric acts that we commit because of lack of understanding, lack of moral evolution. We are still having to learn a lot. But again, the law is of progress. So if we look today compared to 200 years ago, 500 years ago, we are progressing. We have to take the bird's eye view to our evolutionary path. We cannot compare today with 10 years ago and think that we are moving backwards, because 10 years is nothing in terms of evolution. You can talk about 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, but we cannot talk about 5, 10 years, right? You say, when I was a child, it was better. It was better. Well, we tend to remember the good times, and we try to avoid remembering the difficulties we went through. So, we have this tendency, most people have this tendency of thinking that things were better in the past. But in reality, the law is of progress. Of course, individually, some may have better times when they were younger, if now they're facing sickness or they're facing difficulties, life difficulties. But they're all learning opportunities for us to continue evolving. Okay?
788.
Yeah, just a second. Danny.
In the book we just read in the book club, from Joanna De Angelis, Light in the Darkness, we finished at the end of the last year. In a chapter, she talks about the rebels, like that there is an intentional group in the spiritual world, like an organized crime, under quotation marks, to block or try to prevent the transition that Earth is going through. Like they seem to be more focused. They know what they're doing, and it's a little bit scary. But then she says, of course, they are not going to prevail, hopefully, but we are transitioning from a world of
Trials and atonements.
trials and atonements to the regeneration, right? To regeneration world, but it might take longer or less. It depends on us if we let us be influenced. And she also talks about how these distractions in our modern life, it's what they are using to get into us. So instead of us maybe working or helping others or being more aware of our, role here as spirits evolving, they are using all these distractions on the phone and social media to keep us not paying attention. It was an interesting chapter.
Yeah, and it's true. Again, we have, of course, a world of trials and atonements. The characteristic is that evil prevails over goodness. So if evil prevails over goodness, we have more spirits that are inclined to do evil than to be good, right? But again, a very large number of these spirits, they are followers. That's one thing that it's explained to us by the spirits, right? So these spirits are having the last opportunity to incarnate here on Earth, many of them, and the last opportunity meaning if they are willing to change, they will continue incarnating here. If they come here and are committed to cause harm to others and commit evil acts, they are not going to be allowed to continue to incarnate on Earth. And again, it's not a prohibition, it's more of a vibrational level, right? Because when Earth becomes a world of regeneration, the vibration will be different. So they will no longer attune to the vibration of Earth, and they will move to less evolved planets. So there they can be the leaders in terms of knowledge, in terms of intellectual advancement, like the ones from Capella that incarnated on Earth 10,000 years ago in 4 different big groups and helped us evolve, right? Until today, we don't know how the pyramids were built, right? They were the ones that had the knowledge, and they took the knowledge with them back to Capella. And we are still trying to understand how it was built. So these individuals, they will have the opportunity in less evolved planets to continue developing their moral aspect and living in so-called barbaric times in the sense of who they are going to live with. They are going to learn also. They are going to be um, they are going to be the ones trying to control the barbaric actions of those even less evolved individuals, right? So yes, the transition is a difficult period because there are those that are in the spiritual world here around Earth, and that they are seeing this happening. They don't want to change. They don't want to move to another uh, world, right? They may not even know consciously that they are going to be moved. But the famous phrase, misery loves company, because if everyone evolves, they either have to evolve also, or they're going to be left alone. And they don't want that. So for two different reasons, they don't want their loved ones to evolve because they'll lose the company, and they don't want the majority to evolve because they will feel inferior to those, right? If you go to a place that everybody, us, with our moral evolution understanding, but you imagine if you go to a place where everybody practice charity from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep, we are going to feel uncomfortable because we are not ready to do that yet. We may learn and we may commit and we may evolve, which is probably what we would do, but we are going to feel uncomfortable. And the easy way out for us would be to try to convince others, well, let's not make so much effort. Let's take a break sometime, right? We don't need to commit because it's not it's our own selfishness and our own pride that forces us to not want others to progress faster than us because we are going to be left behind. You just watch, in a small family, right? Brothers and sisters, how they compete with each other, how they don't want the others to be better than them, right? You amplify this to the whole humanity, and you see our limitations as humanity. Okay.
788. Nations are collective individualities that pass through the phases of infancy, maturity, and decline, just as individuals do. Does this truth, as proven by history, imply that the most advanced nations of this century will ultimately experience their decline and end, just like those of antiquity? Nations that only live a material life and whose greatness is based on force and territorial expansion are born, grow, and die, because the strength of a nation eventually becomes exhausted like that of individuals. Nations whose selfish laws are opposed to the progress of enlightenment and charity die because light kills darkness and charity kills selfishness. That being said, nations and individuals also have a spiritual life, and those whose laws are in harmony with God's eternal laws will continue to live and serve as a beacon for other nations.
So when this was written, it's very interesting, the answer, right? Because we have to think of a lot of nations nowadays that whose greatness is based in force and territorial expansion, right? There are some that come to each one's minds here. But when this was written, who was the greatest empire of the 19th century, right? It was Britain, right? They used to have a phrase, right? The empire where the sun never what?
Sets.
Thanks, Philip. Right? What is it nowadays? It's still a developed country, but it doesn't have any. It has very few islands here and there as possessions, but basically it's just the nation there, the UK, right? France was the intellectual nation of the world. That's why Spiritism was born in France, because the spirits wanted it to be to appear in the nation where it was the nation that was most advanced intellectually at that time in terms of spreading ideas to the rest of the world. France nowadays is a developed country, but you can count on the fingers on things that France still influences the rest of the world. Even in the language, it's not the language that is mostly spoken. At the time of Kardec and for another till the Second World War, French was the official language of international diplomacy. Nowadays is English. So you see how things change. Nations also evolve and decline. We talked about Egypt. Greece was the most advanced nation in after Egypt. Where is it now? It's one of the less advanced countries in Europe, right? The Roman Empire that dominated the whole world, right? Which is now Italy. Italy is an evolved country, but doesn't, where Latin is was the language of mostly the civilized world. Italian nowadays is spoken in Italy and maybe another place, I don't remember where. In the Swiss part, Italian part of Switzerland. So you see how things change, right? So the nations that nowadays dominate the world, China, Russia, the United States, it will happen to them also. Again, Egypt was Egypt for 3,000 years, right? And then it becomes smaller. The domination becomes smaller, right? The British Empire was for like 300 years. Now it's not anymore. So the US has been since the Second World War. Russia was the Soviet Union, now then became Russia. China is a recent superpower. But again, when this greatness is based on force and territorial expansion, they will fail, because what prevails is enlightenment, charity, and the society united in the positive actions, right? We see some nations nowadays that are already, we can say already that they are in the world of regeneration, where goodness prevails. You think about the Nordic countries, you think about New Zealand. These are nations, they have their own problems. They are not free of some difficulties. Denmark, but most of the population lives in harmony and have all the advantages of modern society without having many of the issues that afflict other nations. So this is progress, and this is eventually going to happen to all nations. With ups and downs, with bumps on the road, but eventually will happen. And again, well, the next question is going to talk if we are going to no longer have nations. So let's read about it, because it's an interesting one.
789. Will progress ultimately unite all the people of the earth in a single nation? No, not into a single nation. That would be impossible, because climate differences yield distinct habits and needs that make up nationalities, each of which always need laws tailored to its special habits and needs. Charity has no geographical boundaries and makes no distinction between skin colors. When God's law is the basis of human-made law everywhere, and the law of charity is practiced among nations and among individuals, everyone will live in peace and happiness, because no one will attempt to do wrong to a neighbor or live at the expense of others. The human race advances through the progress of individuals who gradually become enlightened. When they constitute a majority, they take the lead and draw the rest forward. Persons of genius sporadically emerge and give momentum to advancement, and persons of authority, God's instruments, carry out in the course of a few years what the race, left to its own devices, would have taken several centuries to accomplish. The progress of nations further highlights the justice of reincarnation. Through the efforts of moral individuals, a nation advances intellectually and morally, and is ultimately happier in this world and in the next. However, during its slow journey over the course of successive centuries, thousands of individuals die every day. What is the fate of those who have fallen along the way? Does their relative inferiority deprive them of the happiness reserved for future generations? Is their happiness relative? Divine justice cannot permit such an injustice. Through experiencing many lives, the right of happiness is within the reach of all. The legacy of progress. All the legacy of progress does not exclude anyone. Those who have lived during barbaric times can come back in a period of civilization in the same nation or another, and can profit by the advancement of the various nations on earth. However, the concept of one life presents another difficulty. According to that theory, the soul is created at birth. For some individuals to be more advanced than others, God would have to create souls for them that are more advanced than the rest of creation. What would be the source of this favoritism? How can one person who has lived no longer than another, often not even as long, merit a superior soul? That is not the only problem. A nation over the course of 1,000 years transitions from barbarism to civilization. If all human beings lived 1,000 years, one could understand that they would have the time to progress. However, many die every day at all ages, and people are continuously being reborn on earth. At the end of 1,000 years, no trace remains of those who were living in a country 1,000 years before. The nation has become civilized, but who has progressed? Are they the people who were once barbarians? But they died a long time ago. Are they the newcomers? If the soul is created at birth, these souls did not exist during the period of barbarism, and we would be required to assert that the efforts made to civilize the nation do not have the power to improve imperfect souls, but to make God create more perfect souls. We will now compare this theory of progress with that given by the spirits. The souls that come to a civilized nation have had their infancy like all others, but they have already lived and are advanced due to prior progress. They are attracted by the circumstances best suited to them and their present condition. The efforts to civilize the nation are not aimed at creating better quality souls in the future, but rather at attracting souls that have already progressed, regardless of where they have previously lived. The progress each nation accomplishes provides the key to the progress of humankind as a whole. It shows that when every nation on earth has reached the same level of moral advancement, our planet will be a haven of good spirits who will live in a fraternal union. All the bad spirits will be repelled and forced to seek surroundings that suit them in the inferior worlds until they are worthy of coming back into our transformed world. The commonly accepted theory of one life, devoid of the concept of reincarnation, leads to another consequence, specifically, that the work of social betterment is only beneficial to present and future generations. This result is null and void for past generations who made the mistake of entering the world too soon and who have to make do, hampered by the faults of their barbaric past. According to Spiritism, the progress accomplished by latter generations is also beneficial to the generations that preceded them, who can improve for the goal of civilization when they reincarnate at a point in the future.
Yeah, it's very interesting that Kardec went into this explanation here, talking about reincarnation, right? The question was not related to reincarnation, but Kardec and talking a lot about reincarnation and the logical of reincarnation, which makes all the sense for those of us that study spiritism. We understand that reincarnation is part of the natural law. It's very clear to us because it makes sense, is rational, and Kardec explains very well. But the question here talks about if we continue evolving, nations will no longer exist on Earth. And again, the Spirit tells us that no, we won't be a single nation. we live in different places. We are different races, different customs, different everything, right? So for us to unite in one single nation is very difficult to foresee. Now, for us to see all nations living in harmony with each other, that is more reasonable for us to foresee, because we already have many countries living in harmony with their neighbors and having very good relationship with their neighbors. And if we continue expanding this for the whole world as we continue progress, we can imagine that eventually charity will prevail, and when God's law is the basis of human law, and the law of charity is practiced among nations, everyone will live in peace and happiness, because no one will attempt to take advantage of the neighbors. Again, this is what a world of regeneration at a more advanced level will entail. Now, in the beginning of a world of regeneration is when goodness prevails over evil. So we still have evil happening. We still have spirits making mistakes out of selfish and pride, but we have a predominance of goodness. Again, if we refer to life in a country like Denmark, for instance, right? Most of the individuals there have access to hospital, access to education. Again, not perfect, of course, with limitations, but much better than the majority of the rest of the world. So our understanding is we are all going to move forward towards this type of situations in many more countries throughout the world. Social security, with all the imperfections, is something that exists for maybe 100 years, maybe even less. And nowadays is something that is well accepted by all countries. Of course, a lot of imperfections, a lot of injustices, but we live in an unjust society. So the fact that it exists doesn't mean it's perfect, but it's better than not existing, right? So then Kardec goes into this study about reincarnation, right? Giving us arguments why reincarnation makes sense, right? So telling us why would it make sense that someone was born 500 years ago and had the opportunity of living in a world where, there was diseases that could not be cured, there was no a means of knowing your neighbors, and someone born today has all these technological advances, so much comforts that didn't have 500 years ago, right? I read some time ago something that I thought very interesting, that an individual that was born 500 years ago, an average individual that was born 500 years ago, would have less knowledge than someone today that reads one whole edition of the New York Times. So you'll find more knowledge in one edition of the New York Times today than an individual 500 years ago would have in their whole life. Again, this doesn't mean moral evolvement. We're not talking about moral. We're talking about intellectual evolvement. But if you bring that individual to today, of course, he would struggle mightily to survive the modern society, right? We don't need to go that far. It's just a matter of going to people that live in these tribes that exist here in this country, in South America, in Africa, and try to bring them to cities, right? They will struggle a lot. Um, you see, you read about the experiences of the Amish, right? That still live in the 19th century in terms of the way they live, and they have the what's called rumpus, I don't know, which the individuals, when they become a certain age, they are allowed to live for 1 year outside of their own communities, and the majority of them return to their communities because they cannot get used to life in a modern civilization. So going back to reincarnation, right? Why would they not have the chance of reincarnate, of living a better life? So we all have lived in these past incarnations, facing the difficulties of the times that we lived. Again, each one of us in their own path of evolution, facing their own challenges, learning from it, making mistakes that we are still facing the consequences nowadays. But if you remove reincarnation from the equation of progress, it completely loses the logic sense, right? The common sense. It doesn't make sense to think of law of progress without accepting the concept of reincarnation, because we evolve morally and intellectually. We are always moving forward. When we come back to a new incarnation, we bring all our moral qualities acquired in previous incarnations and the intellectual abilities that are necessary for that incarnation. Not all of them. Some of them become dormant in our unconscious because we need to focus on other areas of our intellectual development. But all the moral qualities that we have with us, we always carry with us. And what would be the sense of a spirit being created at the moment of birth, right? Um, Again, we are not going to waste much time here, because for all of us here, reincarnation, it's not that we believe in reincarnation, we know that reincarnation exists, right? Because anything that you believe, you can stop believing at one day. And I don't think any of us here is going to stop believing in reincarnation, because reincarnation makes complete sense. If someone disagrees, please let us know here. Okay. Okay, there was a very long explanation. Now we're going to, yes, Danny, go ahead.
So it says here that spirits that are they're assigned to come and help us, right?
Yes,
More advanced. So
I forgot to talk about it.
what did you say?
It's a good point. I forgot to talk about it. I should have talked about it. So go ahead.
But are these spirits coming from worlds that advanced and they were left behind in a way, not able to follow, or are they coming from very advanced worlds with these specific missions to help us?
No, it can be any of the above, right? But many of them are just more advanced spirits here from Earth. You know,
Oh,
you think of an Einstein, let's say, right? Genius that brought us so much progress. He's a spirit that is living here on Earth, and he went to the spiritual world and continued to live here around us on planet Earth, right? So but he has the knowledge of a more intellectually evolved spirit, and he's reincarnated with the mission of bringing the knowledge to us. Sir Isaac Newton, Einstein, and then you have the spirits that are bring us the moral advancement, right? A Mother Teresa, St. Francis of Assisi, some of the apostles reincarnated, right? Um, but they also can come from a more evolved world. You have the example of Alcyone in the book Renunciation, right? She comes from a more evolved world on a specific mission to help her loved one, right? But yes, we can have spirits coming from our more advanced worlds if necessary. Divaldo used to say that you only need 500 more evolved spirits in key places on Earth to give a very big jump in terms of evolution of the world. And he told us that they are starting to come, right? Together with these spirits that are having the last opportunity of reincarnation here on Earth, there are spirits coming to make the necessary changes for Earth to become a planet of regeneration. Some of them are already there, unknown to us. Some of them are reincarnating now and beginning their journey. But you think if you think of some examples that we had in the past century, right? Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Chico Xavier, they all helped us move forward. And so you just need more of them that we have available, both on Earth and on more evolved planets. So um, it will be a little bit of everything. But also it's important, according to our ability to accept and understand them, right? Because Einstein came in the beginning of the 20th century, right? He could not have brought his knowledge before that because we were available. We had the knowledge available was enough for him to build on. Then Steve Hawkins built on what Einstein brought to us. Einstein built on what Sir Isaac Newton developed almost by himself, right? You think of a Leonardo da Vinci that had the knowledge, so much knowledge for his time, right? But some of the things that he brought, we're still studying today, right? It is said that Leonardo da Vinci reached the point in his life that he decided there was nothing else for him to learn in society at that time, and he decided to isolate himself. It's very possible. He was so advanced for his time, right? But all these spirits will continue coming and helping us progress at the same time that we have spirits, as you mentioned before, that are trying to prevent us from moving forward. They're trying to make us stay where we are because nobody can make us regress. The law is of progress. The law of progress is one of the divine laws. Law of regress does not exist. So again, we individual spirits cannot regress. We can go to less evolved worlds, but we will continue to have our moral and intellectual knowledge that we have today. Okay? Okay. We were going to start civilization, but we have 5 minutes left. I think I'm going to leave civilization for next week. If anyone has any final questions here. No questions today, Paco? So just an update of what we have this weekend. On Sunday, we have a very interesting event called Spiritism in the Arts that is promoted by the Tri-State Spiritist Federation. It's going to feature the Brazilian singer and songwriter Cacá Rezende and special guests. It's going to be in Milford, Connecticut, at the MAC, at the Milford train, Sunday at 5 p.m. It's called Spiritism in the Arts. It's going to be music. It's going to be piano presentation, theater, art presentation, and poetry. All right. It's a lot of arts related to Spiritism. On Saturday, the talk of the United States Spiritist Federation is going to be given by Luis Lima, and he's going to talk about Procrustean solutions. Don't ask me what is this. I have no idea. And you can watch, and I'm going to watch to see what's going on. There is a new edition of the Spiritist Review. You can find the link on our email, weekly email. This coming Sunday at 11 a.m., it's the third Sunday of the month. So we'll be studying the Medium's book. Book club next week, chapter 2 of the book Arduous Ascension by the spirit Victor Hugo through the psychography of Divaldo Franco. This is Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, John, for hosting for us this evening. Thank you, Philip, also for reading, and everyone who is here tonight celebrating our studies. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together again for our studies of the Spirit's book, Book 3, Chapter 8, Degenerate Peoples. We are imperfect spirits in society and can lapse into less than perfect actions. There is forward movement and progress despite what appears to be a decline for individuals and nations. The law of progress appears slowly. Light kills darkness and charity kills selfishness. Harmonious vibrations are beacons of God's law for the individual and nations as well. We are moving toward a world of regeneration where goodness will prevail and divine justice will be the norm. We know that reincarnation exists, and we are trying to balance now our intellectual and moral knowledge in service of others. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, for our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center SGNY and all spiritist centers throughout the world that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth now and remind ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.